like, okay, so in this video we're going to explain about the randomization of color that you're asking about in the process tree checklist. So the question itself is quite vague and I cannot quite understand the actual specific scenario of the problem that the question itself poses. So I can only assume, right? And in assuming that, in speculating, I have devised 3 likely scenarios that that question actually asks about. So, yep, let's get to the point. Scenario number 1 here, the likely scenario number 1 that I've devised. There's a logo, a single logo with a single solid color. So we have a single logo with a single solid color, for example red, and we want the color to transform into numerous other colors from the set palette, possibly with random time interval or duration between these color transformations. The color then returns to the original red color. So let me explain that a little bit here. In scenario number 1, we have a single object, so let's just turn these objects off. So we have a single letter A here, and then this object has a single solid color, in this example a red color, right? So we want this red color to transform into other colors inside the set palette that we've already set. Okay, so this red will transform into those set color palette before eventually returning to the color red again. And the interval between change is random or not similar between each color. So for example, from red into yellow we have 4 seconds, from yellow into blue, for example, we have 1 second, etc, etc. Eventually it will return back to red again. So let's just go to the actual solution. So in this project here, I have already applied the fill effect here due to the phrase in your question that states something like this: without keyframing the fill color. The fill color here, I assume, is that you are using the fill effect to colorize your shape or your object, all right? So I assume that you're using this fill effect then. Okay. So, all right. So that is the scenario number 1. How are we going to change this red color into numerous other colors before returning to the red color again? Because we are not allowed to keyframe the color property here, as you stated in the question, then we are using another effect called Colorama, which is actually pretty handy in doing a color cycle or color looping with a set color palette. So let's just get to the point. Colorama here, this is an adjustment layer, adjustment layer that is still empty, and we are going to apply the Colorama effect there. Just type the word Colorama there and then apply the Colorama effect on the adjustment layer. All right. Okay, so now the set color palette, this is the output cycle control group, output cycle, right? This is where we input the set defined color palette that you want to apply for this object over here. So for example, you want 4 different colors for this object here. You want 4 different colors. So that from red it changes into, for example, blue, and then green, and then yellow before returning to red again. So we have these 4 colors. So to do that, we simply have to adjust or manipulate this color wheel to conform with the color palette that you want. For example, in the previous explanation, we have 4 colors, right? You want red, and then green, blue, and then yellow. 4 colors. So let's just delete some of these triangles that are not used, because obviously here we have 6 triangles, which means 6 colors, while in reality we want to have only 4 colors. So let's delete 2 of them. You can delete a triangle by clicking and dragging away from the circle, clicking and dragging, clicking and then dragging away, clicking and dragging away from the circle, like that. Okay, that's how you delete the triangle. Now, because we want the color palette to be red, green, blue, and yellow, so now let's change these colors. This is red, right? The red, which means the original color of the object here, okay, the red. So let's just double click this triangle, double click it, all right, and then let's conform with the color of this object here. So it's already that red. And this is the drawback of the Colorama effect, is that you don't have a color picker. So we do not have a color picker over here. Unlike the other effects, for example, the fill effect, you have the color picker with the eyedropper tool, so you can just sample directly and then it will automatically record that color for you. Unfortunately, with the Colorama effect, which is quite a strange thing, it surprises me too, because it's been a very long time since I used this effect. So I just realized that this effect doesn't have the eyedropper tool, so we have to manually adjust the color into this similar color. So for example, here, this is the original color of the letter A, which is red, and we want to adjust it to here, the color of the first triangle over here, right? We want to make it similar. So I think it's already similar. I don't know whether it's actually similar or not. Yeah, I think it's already similar. All right, if you want to get nitty-gritty, to get a really detailed color definition, then you can go into the effect here, and let's see at the RGB value here. So the RGB value is at 100, green is at 0, blue at 0. Okay, so 100, 0, 0. And let's apply that to the Colorama here, double click. And let's see. Oh, because it is not using percentage, but using the, I don't know, what is it? The, yeah, from 0 to 255. So we cannot exactly input the same value here. Yeah, that's quite a shame, right? So anyway, what we need to do is just to match this color into this color. Okay, it's already matching. And this color, we want it to be green, just a, I don't know what kind of green. Maybe this kind of green, just a little bit like that. Okay, a green. And then this one is blue. What kind of blue? Probably this kind of blue. All right. And this one is yellow. And this kind of yellow. Okay, so this is the set color palette that you want. Okay, we have 4 colors. And then because you stated on the question that you want it to be a little bit randomized, then we can adjust the duration of these transitions between colors. So let's just adjust the distancing between these triangles. So for example, from red to green, we have this rather short, and from green to blue, a little bit longer, and then from blue to yellow, there's quite a distance. Okay, just to make it a little bit randomized. All right. So we have already this kind of color palette input into the Colorama effect. All right, and now let's enable the Colorama effect again. There you go. You see, the original color of the object is not red, right? So how do we make it red as the original one? Well, we go to the object itself here, right? But first of all, we want to lock the Colorama effect. Let's just lock this control panel over here, and let's just, yeah, let's just click on this triangle so that we know this color over here, and then click on this color over here, and let's reveal the fill effect using the E shortcut key, E keyboard shortcut key, and there you go. Now, to make this into the original color, to make this letter A into its original color, we need to go to the grayscale value here. Okay, so from this red over here, we need to make it grayscale, and then from here we just drag this pointer up or down, or you can use the B or brightness control over here. Up and down is the same thing as dragging this over here. So by dragging this, we can adjust this letter's color over here so that it is matching or similar with the color over here, right? So this is the original color, this is the object's color, eventual color with the Colorama effect on. So just adjust it so that it is similar. Obviously, I think this is already similar. There you go, that A bright red is already similar. All right. So there you go, Mike. This color A without the Colorama effect is now rather black, because in essence the Colorama effect reads the original color value from the object. The original color value from the object is being read as grayscale, and then from that grayscale value it is mapped into this color wheel over here. Well, I don't have to explain in detail about the mechanism of the Colorama effect. because it is obviously very long. This Colorama effect is mightily complex, very, very complex, lots of controls under these here, under these groups. And in fact, I have about 4 or 5 pages worth of the Colorama effects explanation. So yeah, I think if you want a complete explanation about the Colorama effect, I can give you those pages. All right, so in essence, with the Colorama effect turned on previously, okay, when it's still red over here, the fill color is still red. When it's turned on, then this is not red. As you can see, it is being mapped into something like blue or green. But now, because we have already changed the grayscale value of the color here on the fill color, then we can map the letter A into its original red color. Okay, so that's it. All right, now that we have set the letter into its original color, then let's cycle, or let's make the color animation, the random color animation. So let's go to the input phase here, and we have this phase shift control. All right, so let's keyframe the phase shift control. This is the control that you want to use to animate the colors, okay, to make the cycling color using these color palettes that you have already defined. So from this position over here, we enable the stopwatch for the phase shift control, and let's just go, for example, to 2 seconds mark. Okay, 2 seconds, and let's make one complete circle, because obviously we want the animation to loop. All right, so we have to make it one complete circle, one complete rotation, because this is essentially a rotational control for the color wheel. So let's just input a value of 1 over here, and there you go. Right, and now we have this animation over there on the letter A using the set color palette that you've already set. Right, there you go, Mike. And the beauty of it is that it's automatically looping, because already we have set one complete circle here, 360 degree. If we are just using a value less than that, for example 90 degree, then obviously it's not going to loop. The last frame here, this is the last frame, is different than the first frame, so it's not looping. So that is why we have to use the value of one complete circle, or one complete rotation, which is 360 degree. You can use the value of 1 here, or you can use the value of 360. It's the same thing. All right, so we have this looping here, and now let's see if it's actually looping. Let's go back 1 frame and the animation there, and let's play. There you go. Yep, I think it's looping, although it's rather quick, because yeah, the distance between red and green is rather short, so that there is some short snapping change there. It doesn't matter, it's actually already looping. But if we want to make it a little bit more clear, then we can make this something like this. Right, there you go. Let's see if it's more noticeable. Yeah, I think that's good. It's already looping anyway, because the first frame here is similar with the last frame here. Okay, this first frame, this last frame is the same as the first frame. All right. Now, if you don't want that transition from one color to another that smooth, this, as you can see, it's transitioning from one color to the other rather smoothly, right? If you want some snapping change, like blinking change, then you can disable this interpolate palette control. Just disable that, and then you can see the color wheel itself is already changing into posterized color wheel. So when you play back the animation, it's actually doing what we call as hold transformations, like this. There is no transitions, it's just doing blinking like that. Okay, flashing just like that. If that is what you want, then you can do that. Okay, so that is the first scenario. All right, yeah, I think that's it, the first scenario. So essentially what you have to do is just use the Colorama effect, and then input the set color palette you want over here on the output cycle group, input the colors over here, and then change the color of the letter into the original red one by using the fill color here by making it grayscale, and change the brightness value. Once you have get this letter A into the original color, then you can begin to keyframe the phase shift control here to actually loop the color. All right, so that's scenario number 1, and let's see if we have another scenario. Yep, let's delete this one. So let's get to scenario number 2. Let's enable all of this. Let's change this back into the original red like this. All right, so we've gone back to the pristine beginning. So scenario number 2 tells us that on the scene there are multiple objects. Okay, on the scene we have multiple objects. Each of these objects have their own colors. For example, red, yellow, and blue. Each object initially will display their original color, but then the color transforms into each of the other objects' colors subsequently before returning to the original color. Okay, before returning to the original color. So here we have the 3 objects. We have the multiple objects. The letter A, the letter B, and the letter C. Each have their own colors, the red, blue, and yellow, right? So in the second scenario, we want this letter A here to transform into the other object's colors before returning to the object's own color itself. So for example, on the letter A here, from red it changes into blue, and then changes into yellow before returning to red again. And then in this letter B, it changes from blue to yellow to red before returning to blue again. And in the C, it changes from yellow to red and then blue before returning to yellow again. So that's scenario number 2. Okay, so it's actually just the same as previously because we have a set color palette, right? But in this case we have only 3 colors instead of 4, because we already know that each object will transform into those 3 colors, that is red, blue, and yellow. So we have 3 colors as the color palette. So here we apply the Colorama effect again on the adjustment layer. There you go, Colorama, and then you can see, as usual, because the Colorama effect is applied and that the grayscale value from these objects are mapped into this output cycle, then we have these altered color, which is not normal, because obviously at the very beginning, initially, we want these objects to show their original color, right? Just like when the Colorama effect is disabled. So each object have their own color, original color showing. So when we enable the Colorama effect, we have this. But that is not our concern right now. Right now we only need to input what are the color palette that we want to input, right? Because as already explained, we have 3 color palette. We have 3 colors on the color palette. So let's just delete these triangles, right? We have 3, and then to make it a little bit random, we just need to adjust their duration so that it's not uniform between triangles. So we need to change these colors into the 3 colors we have already defined. And yeah, we have to disable the Colorama effect so that we can see exactly what are the original colors. So here the color A is red, yeah, that's great. And the B is blue, that kind of blue. Double click the triangle and let's see what kind of blue. Is it this kind of blue? Yeah, I think that's close. Maybe, I don't know. And this one, the C, is this kind of yellow. Yeah, I think that's close already. So now we have already input the 3 colors on the palette, right? Now, once we have input these 3 colors, which each color represents each color of these objects, right? Now let's just enable the Colorama effect. So as you can see, the objects are going back to the abnormal state of their colors. Now we have to make them back toward the original color. So in this case, the letter A, we need to open up the, let's just lock the Colorama effect, lock it first, and let's open up, click this triangle to display this red color here. And now let's go to the letter A here, shortcut E, and then open up the color dialog, and let's make it grayscale. So the fill colors property here is set to grayscale so that we can define the original color of the letter. As you can see there, the red here is similar to this. Okay, so let's just OK, and now the letter B, its fill effect displayed, and let's change it into grayscale, and let's just adjust this value here, or using this control over here, so we find the blue color that we want, something like, oh, for example here, let's just click this first so that we know exactly this kind of blue over here, right? So let's see, go to the grayscale, and let's find the same blue. What kind of blue is that? %. I think it's because the color wheel is too close together. That's why we cannot have the exact color that we want, because it's too sensitive now, because when it's too closer together, the color wheel is too sensitive. So possibly around here we can find the blue color that we want. It's still difficult, so let's just make it a little bit like that, more separated, and then find the blue color. I think that's pretty close, right? This one over here toward this one over here. It's pretty close, right? All right, and now the C. Well, let's see. The C, I think, is already great. The C here, no, not really. It's still orangey, so we still have to set it to something like that kind of yellow. That bright yellow. There you go. So there you go. Okay, so we have this color. So now each of the objects have their own original color displaying already, and now let's get to the phase shift control here over here. On the input phase, we have the phase shift control as usual. So let's just keyframe this and display its keyframe over here, and let's go to frame 3 seconds mark over here, 3 seconds, right? And let's make it the phase shift as one complete circle. There you go. This is the last frame. It is similar to the first frame. There you go. Right, so it's perfectly looping. So now, as you can see, the color goes from, look at this color A, it goes from red and then blue, right there, the blue, and then yellow, and then returning into red again. So essentially each object is displaying the 3 colors of the other object. There you go. For example, here the C letter from yellow changes to red, and then changes to blue. There you go, blue before returning to yellow again. So now let's loop it, go back 1 frame, change the duration there at the end of the animation, and there you go. Yep, each object is looping its color based on the color of the other objects, right? It's looping perfectly. All right. So that is scenario number 2. Okay, scenario number 2 is done. Now let's get to the scenario number 3. So let's just delete this one over here, and yeah, let's just get this to the original pristine state. There you go. Enable this, and yep, this is the original state. So now scenario number 3 tells us that on the scene there are multiple objects. So we have multiple objects on the scene, each of these objects have their own colors, for example, red, yellow, and blue, which is the same as previously. Each object will transform its color into a set color palette, possibly with random duration between each transformations, before returning to the original color. Okay, so each object, we have the same thing here, essentially. Each object have their own, each of the objects have their own colors, red, blue, and yellow. And then each object will eventually change into a set color palette before returning to their original color again. So for example, the set color palette is, I don't know, whatever you want, like green, brown, purple, green, brown, purple, and then returning to red again. Okay, so we can do something like this. Just the same thing, essentially. Just apply the Colorama effect over there, and now we have to know exactly what are the color palettes. So after we have applied the Colorama effect, the next thing we do is input the color palette, the color that we want. So yeah, what kind of colors we want here? For example, red changes into, I don't know, I think 5 would be great. We have 5 colors. Let's see. Yeah, because we want to use just a single Colorama effect, then obviously the color palette here must include the color of the other objects too, right? So like this, for example. Yeah, I think more colors will be great, so that we can have variations. So red is already there, red, right? And then blue, for example, just let's say blue is over here, that kind of blue, for example. Okay, and then it's kind of yellow, yellow is over here. All right. Yeah, so essentially we still have the same colors of the objects in there, and yet there are other colors as well that we want, which is actually the color palette. For example, yeah, something like that, probably green, and this one is purple maybe, right? And I don't know, I think, what if the purple is over here? Yeah, that's the purple, and this is the green, and this is the pink, maybe. Oh no. Oh yeah, of course, that's it. Okay, so this is the color palette. So essentially, because we are only using a single Colorama effect, which obviously means that we have only a single color wheel, and yet we want these objects to have their own original colors, then we have to input these original colors into the color wheel. All right, while at the same time we're inputting the color palette that we want over here. Now let's enable the Colorama effect, and yep, let's change these objects into their original color. So let's lock the Colorama effect again. Let's lock the control panel, and let's go to the fill, and there you go. We change it to red, grayscale, and then red. There you go. That's the red. Okay, so it's already on the original color. And then the letter B. The letter B, we want it to become blue. So we change it to grayscale, and let's find which one is blue. Oh, blue is always difficult to find. I don't know why. Maybe I'm a little bit colorblind. Yeah, I think this blue is great. Blue, and then the C. I think the C is already great. C has that kind of yellow. This kind of yellow over here. I think it's already matching, right? So we don't have to change it. Because essentially, Colorama reads the luminance value of any color on the original color. On the original object, it has the original color, right? That original color will be read as the luminance value, and that luminance value will be translated into grayscale, and that grayscale will eventually be mapped into this color wheel over here. All right, so eventually we have the original color again, right? So as usual, it's the same thing. It's very simple, right? We just go to the input face over here and then keyframe the face, shift control, and then make it from 0 to, let's say, because it's rather long, let's make it something like 4, or maybe 4.5, and let's enable the phase shift into a value of 1, right? So let's just put a value of 1 into here so that it's completely looping perfectly. Remember that. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the last frame. Let's just take a snapshot and let's go to the first frame and let's see the difference. No difference, right? So that means that it's perfectly looping. So there you go, Mike. If you want a color evolution or a color cycle to completely loop, then you have to use this control over here, phase shift, input a value of 1 or 1 complete rotation. So let's go over here. Let's input the end of the animation 1 frame backward over there, and let's play back the animation. And let's see if it's indeed looping with the set color palette that we want. There you go. I think it's looping perfectly. Yep. There you go. Okay, so the letter A, from it shows different colors from red, the original one, to purple, to blue, green, yellow, and then to red again, conforming to this color wheel over here and the color palette that we already set. Ditto with other letters, with the other objects too. They're showing different colors with the set color palette we have already defined before returning to the original color again to loop. All right. Well, I think that's it. So we have 3 scenarios there. The first scenario, when you have only a single object and you want to randomize the colors. The second scenario, you have multiple objects and you want each of the objects to initially show their original color first, okay, before changing into the other object's colors and then returning to the original color again. And then the third scenario, where we have multiple objects, where each of the objects first show their original colors before changing into the set color palette we have set and then returning to the original color again. Alright, so it's perfectly looping already. So there you go, Mike. I'm sorry if this is a little bit confusing, but yeah, this is what comes into my mind when you are asking that kind of question. So if this is not what you want, please clarify the question so I can troubleshoot it more specifically regarding the problem there. So hopefully this satisfies the question, hopefully. And if it's confusing, then you can ask me more on the email. Okay. Oh yeah, of course, if you, as usual, I've already described this or not, I don't know, I've already forgotten. If you want to enable the if you want to disable the transformation from one color to the next, not as smooth as this one, then you can uncheck this interpolate palette, uncheck it, and then as you can see, the color wheel is posterized, so you can see there is no transformation between colors. It's just like blinking. As you can see there, it's blinking like that. If that is what you want, then you can keep this checkbox unchecked. All right, interpolate palette just below the color wheel. Okay. The looping is still the same. It's looping perfectly, but there's no transition between colors. Okay. So there you go. Okay, thank you, Mike. I think this is already getting too